Okay, so for this video, we are going to focus on the two main parts of Lab 1, and that is lighting, the basics of lighting, to get you started on learning how to use the lights, and basic materials. Okay, so I've opened my frog, got him set up here, and I've set this up so you can just see basics that I've got. The first thing you want to make sure you do, select your render setup by selecting your render setup button, open the dialog box, and then change your renderer to Arnold. Now, you can use the Arnold lights without changing this, but when you render it out, it will render out black. So if you've set everything up and you can't figure out why it's black, make sure you go in and check your renderer to make sure that it's set to Arnold. Materials shouldn't work at all unless you've done this. You need to do this so the materials come in, but we'll talk about materials when we get to that video. Okay, so for now we're good to go. So we can just close this. And then we're going to come over here and select the lights, the light tab, pull down, and go to Arnold. And we will have our Arnold light. The great thing about Arnold lighting is that you control it through one light. There aren't multiples to play with. Makes it a lot easier to change it. So I'm going to go down here in the front view. I know we've been putting our lights in on the top view in 2400, but in this class the lighting for Arnold is different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here in my front view, my frog, and I'm going to put my first light, my key light, here. And I put it here because you can see it is oriented towards this rectangle. So it orients it in the front view. I'm now going to come over and grab my select and move tool, and I'm going to move this to my key light location, which I'm going to put it right there. And then I'm going to go over and select and rotate tool. And now I'm going to rotate my light to be directed at my frog. It works both like an Omni and a target light that we've been working with, but it's even better than that. You'll see in a minute. Okay, so now I've got my key light in here. I want to create a separate light. You don't want to clone this as an instance. You can clone it, but I just prefer to go ahead and just create another one to make sure that I have them as separate lights. And I'm going to put this one in here. And again, select and move tool. Move that light to about right here. Select and rotate tool. And point him towards point it towards the frog. Okay, so I now have my two lights in here. You'll see both those lights. And I'm now going to make adjustments. So I'm going to move this back over. You can still, make sure you can still see this. Okay, you can still see this view, but now you can see my frog. Render production. I'm going to render it out. Now, it has some issues with some materials that I had in here before that I deleted, and so that's why it's giving me this message. It should stop. See, it's saying it does not support standard materials. You cannot use standard materials with Arnold. You have to use Arnold materials with Arnold. Arnold renderer. So you see what it's looking for is it sees that I've changed it to Arnold. So now it's just telling me that my materials that I used before won't work. So if you're getting this error message, this is why, and it's an honest error message, and it's nothing to be worried about. You can clear this, close, and don't worry about it. Okay, so I actually had rendered the wrong view. I want to render the perspective, so let's render that out. And it's doing it again. Don't worry about it. Okay, so you see that with those two lights, my initial pass at the frog is way too dark, and it's also very blue. This is how we're going to fix that. Okay, so I'm going to select my key light, go to my modify tab over here, and you see I have all my different parameters. Alright, so by default this is a quad light, which is what we want to use in this case. Light properties on. You can click it to be targeted if you want. If you like the box, you can turn that on so you can see it. You can move the target distance. Fine with where it is for now. Quad, we're going to leave that alone, and then we're going to come down to color and intensity. Intensity. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll all the way down here to where I see intensity. In Arnold lighting, there are two main controls that we want to look at: intensity and exposure. Before we were just using intensity. Now we're adding exposure. Exposure is sort of like, you know, when you see 2 squared and that second 2 over that first 2 tells you what to do to the first 2? Well, that's exactly what happens here. Our intensity is the first 2, the big 2. The exposure is the squared. So what we're doing here with our exposure is telling it how many times to multiply the intensity. Right now we've started off with 1 and 8. I've read different arguments on what to do with this, whether you want to move the intensity first or the exposure first. And honestly, as long as this number adds up to the right combination, I haven't found a difference yet. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to incrementally increase my intensity. And let's render that out. Okay, I'm going to just stop. I'm going to tell it to stop opening that for now. It keeps wanting to default to that top. And still not enough light. But it got a little bit brighter. Okay, so I'm going to close that. And I'm going to try increasing this to 6. Normally you want to do this small increments, but you can go bigger if you notice that you need a big boost. Keeps wanting to render that top view. And here we go, and you can see the frog has gotten lighter. Still not bright enough. Change this to 12, and this to 12. And let's see what that does. Oh, you can see my light's getting a little bit brighter there. Let's try going from here. Oh, there you go. And now you see I can see my frog. That's pretty good. So intensity was 12, exposure was 12, and now I want to go and select my fill light, excuse me, and make some changes there. And I'm going to try 4 on this and 8. And let's see how we do. Looks pretty good. Okay, so there we are. Very, very basics on setting up your basic lighting in Arnold.